Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to this podcast, Season 7, Episode 18. My name is Tim Mitchell. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jonathan Kuline in Jacksontown, New Brunswick.
Hey, you got it right. Hello there, kids.
And we're also joined by Jaime Lippis Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Got that one right, too?
Yeah. Everything's good.
Alrighty. Okay, so from fact check, it was in fact Sandra Bullock that accepted the Razzie for, worst movie of the year for the movie All About Steve. And when she was accepting, she showed up and she said, well, there has to be 700, she says it's a winning award for a movie that nobody saw. But she says, there are like 700 people who voted for this, who would have to vote. And since the majority has to win, 360 maybe saw the movie. And she said to them, she gave them all About Steve DVDs because she didn't believe for a minute that any of them watched it. And she says, I'll come back next year and give you back the Razzie if you watch the movie. So she did. But ironically, that was the same year that she won Best Actress for The Blind Side Oscar.
Well, that's a good sport.
Yeah, and then on the same time frame on YouTube 14 years ago, but I think that's when YouTube started, Halle Berry had also accepted for Catwoman, and her acting and even the acceptance speech was over the top. So not much I can say. But the funny thing about it is she actually brought her Oscar with her to the dais as she accepted the award.
That's funny.
Yeah. And we were talking last week, a review of the Severance season 2, episode 1 in this particular case, and we were talking about how Hallie or Helena had said to the board that they're abusing them, but I believe it was Innie Hallie who, because the whole gist of the last season was that they were going to wake themselves up in off hours, right? And yeah. So Helena woke up as Innie Hallie and then said, hey, they're abusing them down there.
Right.
So, and as we find out in spoilers for this, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes later on the show today, Audi Helena turns out to be on the board, as we kind of surmise, but she's also seems to be the founder's daughter.
Yep.
So, and a piece of work, but we'll get to that later. And then I got the Kaufman Henson story backward. Now I should have looked up the name of the actor who was supposed to play the role, because he looks like Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman?
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, Kaufman.
Yeah. So the actor whose name I'm forgetting now was hired to do Jim Henson, but he ended up doing the two roles because they're not on the screen at the same time. So. It's a great job. I mean, I noticed right away. A lot of people didn't notice, but I noticed right away when he was on the show that he was the same actor, because I had just finished watching Succession. And yeah, so that's it for we'll get back to Saturday Night, which is the name of the movie, a little bit later. So anyway, but over to headlines, and JPK is up first.
Yeah, so we'll start off with a little Star Wars news. There was a good piece last week, or this week, I guess, on IO9 talking about the shows that had done the best. Now, this is taken from some data from Deadline, but it basically summarizes the fact that in spite of the fact that it was canceled, The Acolyte actually was the second highest rated thing as far as number of viewers on all of Disney Plus last year, which is pretty funny when you consider that it obviously got a huge backlash. People were trolling it, and also eventually Disney kowtowed to that and canceled it. They said at the time that it was because of budget. They said that it was too expensive to keep making more, although that doesn't seem like it stopped them from some other projects. But apparently, Percy Jackson and the Olympians got top spot with over 3 billion minutes viewed, and The Acolyte came in second with 2.7 billion minutes viewed. So it makes it seem very much like it had a very large viewership. Now, whether that was, hate watching or whatever, either way, it doesn't really add up to a show that would be canceled normally. So I thought that was pretty interesting that in spite of what appears to be what these streaming services want most, which is eyeballs on their platform, and that was delivering those, they still pulled the plug on it. Any thoughts on this rather confusing situation?
Well, I mean, given that everything these days seems to be distorted with reality. It does. I mean, it surprises me, but it doesn't surprise me that they would be so dumb as to kowtow to a bunch of bad people on the interwebs, right? So,
well, that does seem to be the trend that's going around. Yes.
Yeah. I can kind of see some nuance here. So I think you're quite right that if management has a particular direction it wants to take, it will find evidence that supports its direction. So I think you're quite right that like something that is costing a lot and seems like it's not worth it, if they believe in it, it's going forward no matter what, right? Like they find a way to argue for it. If something's going great and there's every reason to continue going, they can find a reason to stop it, right? So that could totally be happening with The Acolyte. I would say that even though it was streaming comparatively well, it doesn't seem like it's getting the kind of minutes that you would expect for how expensive it is. So if you didn't have somebody who was actively championing for it, I could see how people say, you know what are we spending lots of money for just so we can have all sorts of bad publicity about this thing and why it sucks and why it's hurting, culture or whatever the haters are saying. Like, why don't we just spend the money on something else that isn't hated is a reasonable business decision to make. Again, not knowing what actually happened here because, again, management can find reasons to go one way or the other, and they just sort of cherry pick the information that they want to support that approach.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jaime. I think this is just politics disguised as whatever they want to call it. So, oh well.
That said, we weren't totally thrilled with The Acolyte, to be honest.
No, it was flawed. There was no way around it. I mean, I think Leslie Headland, who is the showrunner and creator, I think she's extremely talented, and I've enjoyed a lot of her work, including Russian Doll. But I think that this was a challenging one for people who felt like it was outside of their Star Wars comfort zone, and definitely was, obviously going places that, not every part of the fandom liked. But, again, I think we've talked about it before. Your mileage may vary, not everything is for everybody. And, I just hate that it got bullied into oblivion. All right. Speaking of cancellations, how's that for a segue? Dark Horse Comics has announced this week that it is cutting all ties with the author Neil Gaiman after the new allegations against him regarding his alleged predatory behavior towards women. They had been publishing an ongoing adaptation of Anansi Boys, which is one of his books, and they had obviously worked with him on a number of projects over the past, we'll say 30 years.
Yeah, so, like who was Sandman originally published by? Dark Horse?
Sandman was published by Vertigo, which is an imprint of DC, which is a subsidiary of Warner's. So
okay. They're okay with that kind of behavior. Okay, got
it. I mean, these are the same people who are in bed with J.K. Rowling still, in spite of her toxic interpretation of feminism. So, yeah, I'm not surprised. It's obviously it's easier for a company like Dark Horse, which is a very well-established and very well-respected comic publisher, but definitely smaller than either of the big two, Marvel and DC. They can make this kind of decision, and yes, it will have an economic impact, but I think that they're sticking at the moral high ground, and I think that's the right choice for them. DC, if they decided they were going to, not only did Dark Horse say they are going to cancel his ongoing books, they are not republishing anything that he's ever done for them ever again. That is what they say. If DC were to decide to do that, it would be a much more significant hit because in spite of all the things that have gone on, the Sandman books and some of the other works that Neil has done for DC are still major monetary generators, and I would be very surprised if they decided to take the same move. I'd be impressed if they did, but I don't think they will. So, yeah. So, moral of the story is, once again, and maybe this is, yes, that's the one. Maybe this is our anthem for this podcast, but keep it in your pants, fellas. Come on. All right. And I had to flag this. There is an auction going on right now where you can own a little piece of Doctor Who history. So in order to raise some funds, let's see, what are they calling this thing? It is for, I lost it now. They're trying to raise money for charity. Here we go. All right, I got it now. They're doing a charity auction at propstarauction.com of a whole bunch of Doctor Who props from February 11th to February 25th. Now, sometimes when they do these auctions, and we've certainly talked about some of the Star Trek ones and different pieces they've done, you're like, ho-hum, whatever, it's just a few things. This is incredible. If you're a Doctor Who fan who wants to own some like really amazing props, this is like an all-time, once in a lifetime thing. We're talking like screen-used TARDISes, screen-used Daleks, screen-used costumes for the Doctor, for supporting characters, for aliens, for parts of and entire pieces of Weeping Angel statues, like incredible amount of stuff. So if you want to own a little piece, I mean, you can even own a giant ood face if you feel like you really want one. This is pretty incredible. And again, the bidding's going to get crazy on some of this stuff, but they're starting off pretty low. The starting bid is only £100. Obviously, this isn't a British thing, but I mean, if you want to own a piece of Who history, now is the time to pull out your checkbook because, one, the money's going to charity, and two, holy moly, there's some cool stuff in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I know you're a newer Whovian. Did anything catch your eye?
Yeah, I really do like the Trader Dalek. Like it's a piece that I think, for people who are like real Who fans, if I had this, like I'm in this scenario, it's like in my house, right? And so people who are like real Who fans will definitely know what it is and want to talk about it. So it's a conversation starter. And for people who are kind of more like me, who may not know what the heck this is, it gives you reason to be like, hey, bro, why is this thing all busted? What is this thing? It's like, oh, no, it's not some weird, Art Deco kind of thing. This is, a character from the Doctor Who show. And this one's special. And that's why it looks like this.
Yeah. The Weeping Angel statues would be amazing to put in someone's garden, but not mine.
Right.
Because they would scare the pants off me. Could you imagine, like, get up at night and you see a figure in your garden and it's a weeping angel? I might pass out and never wake up. Like, that is terrifying.
Yeah, somebody said they would get it and just move it around the yard at night.
If you aren't messing around with your family with one of those things, I don't know why you even have a family.
Yeah, you can get Donna's wedding dress as well, and some Matt Smith outfit. You can get Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who coat and scarf.
Yeah, you can get a full Robot Man costume. You get Robot Man parts.
Yeah, you can get Jenna Coleman's Clara outfit, one of her outfits. Yeah.
Yeah, a full 13th Doctor outfit. Yeah, it's like I say, this is like, sometimes you see these auctions and you're like, oh, bits and pieces, but some of this, like, this is incredible. So anyway, we'll have the link in the show notes if you want to have a look. If you do decide to bid, please tell us. We'd like to know, because we'd like to know also if you're interested in sponsoring Spotcast. But there's a really cool collection here for people who are interested in having a little piece of Doctor Who in their household. So good luck.
Yeah, so we were talking about a couple of things on our Slack channel between the three of us during the week about the various things that make movies get picked for the Oscars and that kind of stuff. And Jaime came up with some general rules that maybe movies about slavery or world wars should have a special category because otherwise they tend to run away with all the awards. That said, I did go see The Brutalist at the TIFF Lightbox last weekend. It is an amazing movie. It's actually, I didn't realize it was like as long as it is. There's actually a 15-minute intermission with a timer on it. So yeah, I got in. So it and it's funny because a bunch of people left after the first part, and the real twists and turns in the movie are actually in the second half, right? And it's funny. It's less. I could see why you'd think it's a war movie. It's not really. It's war is like a MacGuffin or a sort of third party thing. This mostly takes place in post-war United States. It's about a fictitious architect played by Adrian Brody and trying to get back with his wife and a benefactor who has him build these big giant brutalist buildings. And that's all I'm going to say without spoiling too much. But the performances by Adrian Brody and the girl from Rogue One.
Daisy Ridley?
No, not Daisy Ridley. The other one from Rogue One.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. The one from...
Yeah, her.
Oh.
But anyway, the reason I posted this here is because it has come to light that it is claimed to be shot in analog. Like it's all practical effects and I'm trying to spell brutalist correctly in my thing here.
Felicity Jones,
yeah, and Guy Pearce plays the benefactor, and there's a bunch of other actors too. But half of the movie, or a good portion of the movie, is spoken where Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones speak Hungarian from Budapest, and it's pre-war Hungarian, so it's not exactly the current dialect as well, right? But the controversy is it's come to light that they used AI to correct some of the pronunciation of some of the actors. It doesn't say specifically which ones or not. So the question here for the panel is, does the fact that they used AI to fix Brody's Hungarian, which none of the three of us could even tell if it was good or bad, would that, in your mind, affect his ability to win Best Actor for Oscar? That said, I mean, he does goes very deep in this role. I mean, having seen it, I could see why everybody else hasn't got a hope in hell of winning an Oscar competing with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, I guess. Oof, that's a tough one. So if someone's in a movie and they're speaking a made-up language, do we deduct marks for the fact that they're not speaking a known language? I don't know. It's. I will say that given the fact that the Oscars have become very international as far as what they're willing to nominate and what they're willing to recognize, it does seem good that they are trying to be accurate and having, the languages that they're representing done accurately. But does it affect their performance? That's a really great question. Jaime, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to the use of AI. I do think right now, and the ways that they used it were kind of like, I don't know, man, you could have done it, I guess, slightly more expensive, but it wouldn't have been that much more expensive. To one, like the blueprints thing is like, come on, dude, like you could have just gotten some blueprints that actually exist. It wouldn't have been that hard. You could just get those on Etsy, right? Recreate them if you really wanted to go the extra mile, sure. The AI part one was like, The Hungarian thing, I'm like, there quite literally still are people who speak that language from that era and would know. Or you can look at recordings and like, and even then we all pretend that like Roman soldiers speak like they're from the British Empire, so the extra nuance it was adding was not necessary. Like if you wanted to go that far, you probably should have got somebody who was actually like all top to bottom set of folks who are Hungarian and make sure they talk to their grandmas and grandpas and really be sure about how would you have said this back then? What would you have said?
Well, they did have vocal coaches, and the thing about it is that Adrian Brody is descended from Hungarian grandparents or something like that, right? Like, so he is legitimately from that era. Felicity Jones, however, is British, right? But I mean, like, so you could also say, then, do we not give awards to films that use CGI? In that case, everybody's going to lose, right? Because I don't think there is a show out there that doesn't use some form of CGI these days, right? So in fact, we watch entire movies regularly on this podcast that are heavily invested in CGI, right?
Yeah,
it's not like they've got 6 fingers, is what I'm saying. Like, like some of those bad AI generated things, and it's not fully generated. And we've had title scenes in other shows that we've talked about in the past that raised people's eyebrows because they used AI for the I think it was I'm trying to think now, which one was it? There was a show last year we talked about that had an AI intro, right? Instead of hiring a title artist to create the titles, right?
Yeah. I can't remember which one, but I do remember us having that discussion. I don't know. I feel like if it was used to improve the dialogue but didn't affect the performance, I guess I am okay with it. But it definitely does seem like if it was overused, I could see why that might be a disqualifying factor in other roles.
I mean, in past movies too, they've had people voice double, body double. People like Jessica Chastain. A friend of mine played piano in a red dress, pretending to be Jessica Chastain because they only filmed her fingers playing the piano because Jessica Chastain doesn't play piano apparently, or doesn't. So where do we draw the line on that, right? Anyway, just thought I'd put that out there. All right, the next one I got up here is Severance. There's an interesting little audio thing here. There's on this link here on Threads. It's a spoiler for the Severance show, as you may or may not have known. As the character shows up for work, they put on their lanyard, they step into the elevator, they go down the elevator. They use a lens trick to change the perspective on the actor's face, and they play a tone. And the tone indicates that the innie has now become awake and the outie is now asleep, right? For all intents and purposes, because the gist of the show is their waking life, their outside work life is severed from their inside work, to keep secrets or whatever the company feels they need to do, right? But it's interesting. So this analyzes the tones that are used when they go down the elevator and the innie is woken up. It's like a G note, and then I forget it's B flat or something like that when they come out, and they use that tone to trigger to the audience that there's been a change. And we, of course, we're not musicians, so I sort of am, but I didn't notice. I had noticed the elevator ding, but I didn't notice it was different between the different modes, right? And what's interesting about this, and this is where the spoiler is that Hallie's tone is different than the other characters on the show. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch this little clip, but yeah, it's pretty informative that when Hallie comes back down in the last couple of episodes, her tone doesn't change. I mean, the elevator ding, to indicate, and it's a different note to indicate that she's still aware.
It's an interesting hypothesis here, like the I don't want to be hurt kind of approach to analyzing this is option one is it could be holy smokes for people who really know what's going on with music, and you get a little bit of an extra flavor, right? You get a hint, a tantalizing, some big reveal. That might be totally intentional. That's option A. Option B is sloppiness on the part of the editing. And you would say, how can that be, Jaime? As like a major show, not this one, but a major show was like, whoopsie, we forgot to remove the Starbucks cup. Remember that era of our life?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we were about to remove a Starbucks cup from this medieval era styled show. So,
I think that in this particular case, I do believe that this is the case, and again, now we'll have to pay attention to it when we watch the show tonight, but or tomorrow. But I think it's an interesting thing. Like sometimes they do that with some directors have like a trademark where they'll have like a red sweater or something, or some color that's introduced into the scene to indicate something, or when in The Sixth Sense, when they're cold, right? Like when you can see the character's breath, that indicates that they're in the presence of a dead person, as it were, right? So it's kind of a neat little trick that directors do put into the stories to sort of, and they become the Easter eggs that people look for in shows, right?
Yeah, and it makes sense. We'll be talking about episode 2 of season 2 in a bit, so maybe we'll save the good stuff for there. But yeah, it is pretty telling when you go through this clip that it could definitely have a lot of bearing on what's happening.
Right. Well, my next story is, I don't know, have you guys ever read Rendezvous with Rama, or of the book?
No.
Okay, so I'm a big Arthur C. Clarke fan. I mean, there's a bunch of authors that I read a lot of stuff. Heinlein is one of them. Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov read a lot of their stuff. There was, 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s are sci-fi. Rendezvous with Them is an interesting one, where this big, it's kind of like the big giant ice cream cone in Star Trek 4 that kind of shows up and just kind of comes into Earth orbit, and they send a bunch of astronauts up to sort of go and check it out, and they get inside there, and they get inside this big giant thing, and it's like a big giant cylinder ship, and it's all run on the inside by these like little tiny robots, like little droids, and like the little mouse robot in Star Wars 4, or episode 4. So it's an interesting perspective from the point of view of like, what would alien life look like? And of course, this is deep thinker Arthur C. Clarke, who always puts a lot of thought into this kind of stuff, right? I mean, we don't see the aliens or we don't see the entities in 2001: A Space Odyssey, but they're definitely there. Like, you get the sense that they're there, right? There's a presence, right? And it's represented by the monolith. But in this particular case, it's a really, really interesting story, because it kind of just plays with the idea. It's not like you're running around there's no pew pew, and there's no lasers and warp engines, stuff like that. It's kind of a very sort of like, this satellite shows up, and they get inside, and there's this whole sort of ecosystem of entities inside, whether they're robotic or machine-like or whatever. Anyway, our man Denis Villeneuve has confirmed that he is going to be working on a rendition of Rendezvous with Rama, which will be really interesting, because he does really good, thought-provoking movies, as we know, with Arrival and the Dune series, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Denis Villeneuve wants to keep making sci-fi movies, I'm in. Blade Runner was awesome. It was not the best story, but it was amazing visuals.
Oh yeah, in 3D, it's like, I've got it on the Vision Pro, and it's a lovely movie to watch.
Yeah, and both the Dune movies, I think are, as we talked about last week when he got snubbed for Oscar nominations, pretty impressive films, showing somebody who's really at the height of their game. So yeah, again, if he wants to keep making sci-fi movies, I'm down.
Yeah, and he did in this article talk about the fact that Dune is sort of on the fantasy side, whereas this, he feels, is more on the science fiction side, because it's the science side of things, right? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they always talk about high fantasy and low fantasy, and high sci-fi and low sci-fi, right? Yeah, Dune is high sci-fi. It's high concept, complicated. It's not Star Wars, which is pretty easy to follow along with.
It's a Western in space.
The one.
All right. So the next story I've got here is just the showrunner. There's the theory going around that I think it's based on the name of the kids in the show, Declan and Kai, or maybe those are character names, that somehow they're named after, I'm trying to find the name of the team here, sports ball team.
Arsenal.
Arsenal.
Yeah,
Arsenal. Yeah. And they've just introduced a new character named Saliba, who apparently is now William Saliba is a new prominent player on Arsenal. So yeah, so the whoever it is out there who has these theories has gone bananas over this particular thing, and the showrunner just sort of says, I don't know, it's a coincidence. So unintentional, unlike the elevator tones.
Well, glad we had that cleared up. I know my mind immediately went to the players on the Arsenal Football Club. How about you, Jaime? That was definitely right up front for you, right?
Exactly. Everybody knows who those guys are. I say in my ignorance, I'm like, oh, they're definitely gonna troll me over this one, but what? These are basically, the Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes of their respective league. I'm like, all right, I'll take your word for it, bro.
All right, well, that's the end of our headlines. That brings us to the main part of the show where we talk about things Star Trek related and other good sci-fi that we're watching. And of course, we've been waiting with bated breath. We can all now exhale, or I don't know what you want to
or groan slightly.
Groan, yeah. We can go back to our normal lives now that we've had the pleasure of seeing Star Trek Section 31. I want my 2 hours back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not the name of the show. It was called something else.
What? Oh, 2 hours. It was an hour and a half. What'd you do for the other half hour?
I probably had a nap in the middle of it.
Put his head down.
the nap in the middle that he had to go back and rewind a little bit.
I'm pretty sure I watched it in three sessions. I started watching it really late at night, and they couldn't hold my attention. I just went to bed, and the next day I go, oh yeah, I guess I better finish watching this because I've got to do a podcast about it, which is about the only reason why you would want to watch this show, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, harsh but fair. It was not good. So it was not what I was expecting. So just for, those who have not yet watched, obviously we're going to get into spoilers, but the high concept premise is the agents of Section 31 need Emperor Georgiou from the Discovery series to come back for one last mission. And then it turns into a pretty predictable and terrible action movie for an hour and a half. Everything that makes her great in Discovery,
anything she does,
is absent. I mean, due respect to Michelle Yeoh, who's an incredible performer and is incredible in that role. This was just dull, just not compelling at all. What made, I think, her character so interesting was that, inner conflict of, all the things she's done versus the things that she, aspires to be and trying to be better for her daughter, and all this conflicted emotion that she plays on Discovery. Not 1 second of it in this thing. When they started talking about doing a Section 31 movie, I guess in my mind, I was kind of hoping it would be her going back to the beginning and maybe starting Section 31, or because she went back in time. We didn't really know to when she left Discovery. And they were going to do this as a series. They decided to do it as a movie because, she won an Oscar and would have cost a lot more. But yeah, I guess I kind of thought there was going to be like, hey, this is why Section 31, or where they had their most arduous mission, or what. And yeah, okay, they put in the MacGuffin of destruction in this one, where, the fate of the universe is at stake here. It's always at stake here. Yeah, this was just boring and predictable and superficial and inconsequential, and it very much deserves the beating that it is getting amongst the fandom right now.
Or was it getting a beating? I can't imagine why. Just a couple of things. I noticed interesting that about it was that. I mean, you can look forward to another movie because they do assemble the crew at the end. Like they all get back together and they're ready to go. Yeah, there you go. So there'll be another one. But what I thought was interesting, and of course we're going to get Jaime to have his opinion or share his opinion, but I thought it was interesting that they had like chapter headings, right? Like they had like sections. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if that was meant to be, initially they were going to be, each one of these going to be an episode. And we talk about this a lot, where sometimes they release 2 episodes at once, sometimes they release 3 episodes at once. And our theory on Spotcast, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the introduction to the TV series is weak in the first episode, or not strong enough to compel you to go on to the rest of the series, right? And it seemed to me like they had, 8 episodes here, that not one of them stood on its own merits to be a single episode, so they decided to make it into a movie. That's my impression of why it all got glommed into one thing.
Yeah. I think my elevator pitch is probably going to be scarily close to what the real elevator pitch was. So mine was, okay, so I know we've had this Section 31 thing on the books as a series for like a long time. I know nobody wants to do this. However, Michelle Yeoh just won an Academy Award. We have to do something to cash in on that. How can we cash in on that?
Yeah, I don't know. They announced it before that, though, right? This was announced before that.
Well, they announced the series beforehand, and then she went on to do Everything Everywhere All at Once and won the Oscar and became, obviously that much more valuable commodity in
she already started as a Bond girl. Come on, right?
Sure. I mean, again, she's been a star in Hong Kong for eons, but it's just, I think you're right, Jaime. I think they were basically like, well, we've got her and we've got this project. We got to do it. But this was exactly what you shouldn't do in this circumstance. If you've got a hot performer and you've got, this property that the fans enjoy, this is about as bad as it could have gotten. Like it's really bad. It's really not enjoyable. And she doesn't give a great performance.
Yeah. Well, I don't think she could really.
Well, I don't think she had a lot to work with, but I mean, there was like a lot of, gratuitous fight scenes and stuff. And it just, so right now it's got 20% on Rotten Tomatoes from the reviewers and 16 from the fans. So, and the critical consensus is please beam this out of here, Scotty. I can't say I disagree. It's so poorly conceived. Like, honestly, I was watching it, and while I was watching it, I was rewriting it in my head. I was like, oh, what they should have done is this. Nope, this scene should be gone. They should have like, I was just rewriting the whole thing. I honestly think my fanfic version in my head was better.
Yeah, but even like an actor like James Hiroku Lau, I've seen him in so many things lately, but he's never a good guy, right? And they start off this whole sort of what's that Jennifer Lawrence series?
Oh yeah, the Hunger Games to become emperor.
Hunger Games, yeah. It starts with the Hunger Games kind of concept at the beginning, where they pit all these people against him, and the two and Michelle Yeoh and San, the character that the other guy plays, kind of they join forces or whatever to get to the end, right? And then one of them has to be emperor, one of them has to be subservient, and he ends up being subservient to her, and like in the middle third of the first part of the show, he dies, quote unquote, right? And I'm thinking to myself, this is me thinking, not Jonathan thinking, there's no way that they have that guy of that caliber die this early in the show, but then again, the way they bring him back is just so weak, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, who else is going to be her nemesis but him, right? So
yeah, who's the mysterious person in the mask? It's like, we know exactly who it is. You showed us who it was. Like, it might as well be, to Jonathan's point about rewriting, you might as well just have him out of the mask. It's, more shocking to her, not necessarily to us, but to her to be like, what the heck? I thought you were dead. Yeah. And you can deal with that aspect of the story rather than, oh, surprise, there's a twist. I'm like, it's a twist for her. It's not a twist for us.
Well, and to have the reveal of her finding out that this character who she theoretically was in love with, to have the reveal not be her seeing him in the flesh, but to have some guy saying he's alive, like, how bad is that? Like, that is textbook story writing. Like, that is the weakest way to reveal that. There's so many incomprehensible decisions that went into this. And, the ingredients aren't terrible. I like some of the performers who are in this. I like, some of the concepts loosely. I thought that Sam Richardson was funny. I love Sam. I thought Casey Roll was really good, and a fun chance for her to play an existing canonized character that we knew, right? I don't understand what they were trying to do here. It's such insane decision making through this whole process.
Yeah, and the young guy who played the smiley Vulcan-y kind of guy, I mean, he's got some bona fides as a child actor too, right? So
yeah,
it's unfortunate. It looks pretty. It does seem to have a lot of pew and blows up real good in some parts, but yeah, it's just so painful to watch, right?
Well, and like I say, if you watch this from beginning to end, what does it do to enhance your enjoyment of Star Trek writ large? I'm going to say nothing. Like,
nothing, exactly.
Not a thing. It is the epitome of standing alone. And I felt like a bit of a hypocrite because as I was watching this, I was like, damn, this is a miss. Damn, this is a miss. I really wish it wasn't a miss. but then I also found myself saying, like, I have to be careful because I'm the one who stands on the soapbox and says, hey, these franchises have got to diversify. They've got to find new ways to bring people into these worlds.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I like that they tried to do something like this. They just did it terribly, and it sets the whole cause back. You know, like, this is the kind of thing that Star Wars should be doing. This is the kind of thing that Star Trek should be doing. This is the kind of stuff that franchises that we love should be doing. They should be playing at the fringes. They should be telling stories that are set in the same universe.
Trying to tell new stories. Yeah,
telling new stories, creating new characters, like, great ideas. But if you're going to do that, like, I get that sometimes you're going to swing and you're going to miss, and sometimes you're going to get hit by the ball. But this one is like a freaking asteroid hit the stadium. Like, this is awful.
Yeah. I got to ask, so, Jaime, you've got a couple of links in here in the show notes. Can you give us the background on those?
Yeah, but before I get to the links, the and I'm not alone on this. I've seen other folks who talked about how, like, it couldn't choose a tone. Like, you see some aspects of, oh, it's a wacky ragtag team of folks, kind of like Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy, right? But both of those movies, movie franchises, are much sillier to begin with. They're a little bit more lighthearted. And this has that, sure, but then it also has doom and gloom stuff that tonally doesn't fit quite right. So the other option could have been to go in the darker area. And I think there's precedence here, right? So I'm gonna pick on the Easter egg / I'm not sure why she's here. And if you're going to have her here as a character, this is what you should do. So Rachel Garrett, right, is a lieutenant here, but we know she's going to be future captain of the Enterprise C.
Yep.
Okay, so you've got official, Starfleet representation to deal with these nut jobs here in Section 31. Okay, if you're going to go that route, I think there's precedence for two different ways to handle that. I think that this should be sort of with her as a center focus. Right, because, like, we know Georgiou is, like, already, like, a wild card to begin with. You're bringing her in from, dictator that was eating sarushi, right, and cackling over it. You're bringing her there. You're trying to bring her on an arc towards, full light side hero, even if kind of an anti-hero. Okay, so I'd actually rather go with the In the Pale Moonlight scene that I linked here in YouTube, where Garrick gets beat up by Cisco, and Garrick says, wait a minute, hold on, that's why you came to me, right? Because you knew that I would be able to do the dirty things that you were unwilling to do, right? You didn't want to get your hands dirty. So I think you could have taken that approach with, like, the Rachel Garrett character, where she's trying to stay as clean as possible, but has to not necessarily do the dirty thing, but kind of look aside as her teammates do the dirty thing that's necessary for the greater good. That was an approach I'd like. Or maybe you make it so that not necessarily her, but you have somebody on this crew that goes the Rogue One direction. So Rogue One chronologically takes place after the Andor series. So we see a Cassian Andor that is much more, a gray character than he is in the much more happy-go-lucky Andor series by comparison, right? Like, he's on a path here to be, fully into the rebellion. In Rogue One, he's definitely in the rebellion, but he's not really, like, a good person. And this scene that I chose here is the one that shows you that, right? He's getting information from an informant, and he really wants to get out of there without hurting anybody when the Empire, patrol realizes that they're there. But the guy who's the informant is, like, injured or disabled in some fashion and can't climb out of there before the troops. And so he has no choice but to kill the dude. He does it in kind of a loving, almost sort of way of, like, oh, no, it's going to be all right. And then shoots the guy in the back, right? Like, he made it quick and easy. That was a really dirty thing to do ostensibly in the benefit of the greater good, so that guy doesn't get tortured and give away the fact that the rebellion knows about these things. I think that's another approach you could have taken, right? Like, it's a very Section 31 kind of thing of, like, you can't be totally clean. You can't always save everyone. Sometimes you got to sacrifice people for their greater good. I think Rogue One showed us a way that you could make this happen. Or if you want to go back to the Andor series, Luthien's character that we talked about being like, oh, I do all the dirty things and I'll never see the light, but I want the light to happen, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, Jaime. Yeah, they really just missed the mark on this one. And as I say, it's disappointing because the concept, not this story, but the concept of Section 31, that dark side of this relentlessly light organization, is really interesting. I thought it's always been an interesting concept. This did nothing to make me more interested in it at all. And that's a failure. That's a failure.
Yeah, it's kind of like the time cops. You have those time police people that you see occasionally in Voyager and Enterprise. They kind of had a mysterious, meddling with the past kind of thing, or fixing the timelines and that kind of stuff, right? That's kind of what I was kind of expecting a Section 31 to be, sort of that, covert operations, kind of thing. And this just ended up being, a farce that started at a bar, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the problem is they never did anything that seemed to warrant oh man, Starfleet could never do that. That's why you need Section 31 for this.
Yeah, like, exactly. This is all just, putting on civilian clothes and running around trying to capture the MacGuffin, which is what most Enterprise episodes are about, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in the end, if they're like, it was not lost on me as I was watching this. This is the first Star Trek movie that has been released this way. They've done these new shows, but this is the first time they've made it a movie. And my thought is, if you're going to make it a movie, it's kind of got to be special. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want these to turn into, like, television movies of the week, things that feel cheap or fast or slapped together. And this feels cheap and slapped together. It doesn't have any kind of gravitas or grandeur or anything. Like, it just feels like another 2-part episode. And it's just, like I say, it's just, more than anything, it's disappointing.
Yeah, especially since it was 9 years since Star Trek Beyond, right?
Yeah, I mean, so, like, when next are we getting some Star Trek? Like,
movie?
Yeah, like,
if ever.
Thanks for this. Like,
maybe J.J. Abrams will do something. I don't know.
Yeah, way to set the cause back, kids.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some better Star Trek, and let's talk about Prodigy. Surprisingly, which up until now was not the best Star Trek we'd seen. We're going to talk about season 2, episode 5 and 6. 5 was Observer's Paradox, and the 6 was Imposter Syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how are we feeling about? So I gotta give you some backstory here. I started watching this because I was a little under the weather and I couldn't work, so I had figured, okay, well, I got to watch these 2 shows for the podcast. So I started watching Observer's Paradox, and then I nodded off, and I woke up, and then there was a whole bunch of clones, right? And then I nodded off again, and then they're all racing around stars and stuff like that. Then I realized, oh, wait a minute, the show kept playing, and I'm now watching episode 7, right? So yeah, it was a really weird way to kind of go, what's going on now? But yeah, so I went back and started Observer Paradox from where I remembered it was, right? So
yeah, Observer's Paradox I didn't mind because I think the older I get, the less I need the pew 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 and the more I like the sciencey stuff. And this was we got to solve a problem to figure out how to undo our previous mistake. And it was them trying to figure out, like, okay, we think that Murph has got something to say. What are we going to do to try and figure out how to get this bleeping, blurping little critter to tell us what he knows? And then they worked the problem for most of the episode. And that was pretty good. And I didn't mind, like, it let the kids kind of be, they were interacting with each other. It was kind of light and fun, and nobody was shooting at them unnecessarily. Like, it kind of worked for me in a strange way. I mean, Jillian the humpback whale was definitely an interesting touch.
Yeah, and an Easter egg, yeah.
Yeah, so...
And a big question.
It's by far not one of the worst episodes of Prodigy that we've seen. And it didn't feel like it was as contrived. It didn't seem to be doing as much of the preaching and teaching that sometimes we stumble over on this. So, yeah, I didn't mind Observer's Paradox. Jaime, what'd you think?
Yeah, I think it, it does a decent job of getting them kicked off into the next phase. So, figuring out what the, find me before they find you thing is happening. I did find some humor there. So one of my questions was, I know it's for our benefit that it's humorous for Janeway to be debriefing Murph, but in universe, I wonder what the point was, because she knew and everybody else there knew. Yeah, we don't understand what this thing is saying, and that's kind of the point of this episode, right? What the heck is it saying? And they figure out in kind of, another Star Trek 4-esque sort of way of like, oh, the whales might know what's going on. Let's ask the whales.
I think it would have been amazing if she asked a question and Patrick Stewart's voice came out and was like, well, obviously it's this.
A whale?
No, from Murph. I think it would just been great if Murph could speak all this time, and he speaks perfect French with an English accent, right?
Yeah, obviously my big question is, why is there a whale on this ship?
Cetacean Ops is...
Oh, Cetacean Ops, yeah. Okay,
it was
but they had little dolphins on
It was like an Easter egg thing in the Okudagrams for the Star Trek Enterprise D, which eventually became canonically available on the Cerritos, and now presumed, given that it shows up in Voyager A, as just a standard thing you have.
Yep.
That's cool, yeah. Well, I have a couple of quotes here. One of them is, "It's a long story, Jillian." Rock says to Jillian at one point.
Yeah.
But the other one I got, though, was, since you mentioned the Cerritos, is the I've forgotten the name of the second command guy. Says, "I haven't seen a crew this functional since the Cerritos."
Yeah. Yeah. Always bringing our guys back on, making fun of them.
Mm-hmm, and in this case, the observer paradox it has to do with Gwyn going into the other realm, right? And and getting the other part of the message, right?
Yeah, with the 2001: A Space Odyssey streaks that they do.
Yeah,
to represent her when they figure out, oh, it's a I guess a phase number. And they use that on her device to see if she can go see what that hint is meant to be.
Yeah, and again, this was essentially a bridge episode, right? It was an episode that's supposed to sort of take you from where we went through the first 4 episodes of, we've done a bad thing, to how are we going to get to the next thing. And, so these 2 episodes are kind of bridging that. And again, as a bridge episode goes, pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, and the sort of, was this the one with the subplot about? No, I guess this was the one with subplot about the Doctor's novel, right? Novelization.
Yes.
With too many Rolandos in it, or something.
Yes.
Not another Rolando. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a good episode.
Into imposter syndrome. So this one, they realize that if they're gonna sneak off on the Infinity, they need to try and buy themselves as much time as possible, and so they create these holograms of themselves. They're not clones, but they're holograms, and they make the standard Mr. Data, or is it Geordi? Geordi asked the wrong question. Somebody capable of beating Data? No, it's somebody capable of thinking they are you. That's probably not going to work out well, right?
Right.
So these holograms are so sophisticated they actually think they are the actual characters themselves, which and then chaos ensues and wacky madness.
And the audience ourselves, I have a hard time deciding which one's which. There was no visual clue or audio clue. They were, and they've done this before with Kirk splitting off into 2 people. They've done that before where they've had shoot him. I think is the line from the original series, right?
Yeah, which made it that much funnier when Rock Talk meets the hologram Rock Talk, and they're like, there's no point fighting about it. Let's see if we can solve this together.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, the personalities definitely come out. So you're right that Rock Talk ends up saving the day because their personality means that they were unwilling to consider fighting their duplicate, even if they weren't sure if they were the duplicate or not. And Jenkum Pog has such esteem issues that he, who should know that he's the real one, is unclear and decides, because he's unable to match the task given by the other one, that he decides he himself is not the real Jenkum Pog.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Jason Mantzoukas is one of my favorite voice actors. Favorite actors. He's a hilarious performer, and I love how weirdly he continues to play this character. Jacob is just he could be really, really insipid if played wrong, but he actually ends up being endearing in spite of the fact that does things like this.
Yeah, and I mean, generally the characters each in their own way, because they're what, six of them. They're all completely different, right? But you're right. Even if the story itself doesn't carry our attention, the characters do, right? Or the characterizations do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, again, not bad. Again, little, as you say, a little well-worn territory, but not in a bad way. I think this one does another good job, and obviously it does set up for the next episode of, they did leave the holograms behind thinking like, well, this isn't going to be a problem, and it turns out it's going to be a problem. So
it's going to be a huge problem. Yeah, we'll leave that.
Right, because their personalities are all mixed up.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah, because it's their personalities and their exteriors are all mixed. So yeah. So yeah, I would say
what could go wrong
compared to our first two episodes and our second two episodes. I think we actually kind of plateaued somewhere nice this week. So it was actually kind of nice in the wake of being so disappointed by Section 31 to have, strangely, for Prodigy be a palate cleanser.
Yep. And what? Only 14 more episodes to go?
14 more episodes to go, or 7 episodes of Spotcast, whatever comes first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Cool.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
Now, back to the show.
All right, let's move on to Severance Season 2, Episode 2. Goodbye, Mrs. Selvig?
Selvig, yeah. This is the alias of Ms. Cobell, the crazy character played so well by Patricia Arquette. So this is obviously sort of the second part of the season premiere. The season premiere was focused on Mark's innie going back inside and sort of, meeting new characters, and then finally sort of breaking down and being like, no, I'm not going to do anything here unless I get my team back. And so at the end of last week, we, get the team back, and they decide they're going to stick around and try and figure out all the mysteries. Here we start back at the same place we did at the end of last season, but we're focusing completely on the outies. As a matter of fact, I didn't realize this until I was reading something later in the week, but there is no innies in this episode.
Right.
Which I think is really interesting.
Well, there were no innies in the other episode either, or no outies. Right?
There were no outies, yeah. So this takes the complete opposite side. So we see what happened on the outside. So we see, we obviously from the first episode we kind of knew that there was some lying going on from the good folks at Lumen as far as how much time has passed and what really happened and all that. So here we actually get to see. We get to see Milchick going around and firing Dylan and firing Irving and, trying to convince Mark to come back. And then we see, more interestingly, we see the sort of what happened with Helena after Helly took control and sort of spilled the beans, how they tried to clean that up, and then how she's sort of dealing with that, including the fact that she's pretty fascinated with the fact that she can now see that she, as Helly, had this kiss with Mark and, is trying to understand exactly what happened in there by watching some of these videos and stuff. So this was a really well-made episode, and exploring this from the flip side of the first one, I thought was a really, really interesting contrast.
Yeah, and they kind of leave a question for everybody really, is why is Mark S so important, right? Well,
there's a couple of questions. Why is Mark S so important? And, as you alluded to in our earlier part, I think it's supposed to be pretty clear that that's not Helly that's in there with them now. That's Helena. So if she's in there with them and sort of trying to find out things about herself, like why would her inner self fall for Mark? And, why has she sort of radicalized, and then also she's going in on behalf of her dad and on behalf of the board and on behalf of the Lumen Corporation. It's now there's the mole inside kind of stuff that's going to be happening is really interesting.
One of my favorite twists of the first season was it starts with Helly waking up on the boardroom table, apparently just having arrived as an innie, not knowing who she is or why she's there, and being very suspicious of people and freaking out. And then as the story goes on, they kind of have this conspiracy because Mark meets up with a former employee who gets him thinking about this conspiracy thing, and his brother-in-law is a huge anti-severing advocate, right? And to the point where they're all going to wake up and stuff like that, and they get to the point in I think it's the middle of the season or maybe fifth or sixth episode where Helly finally decides she's going to resign. And only to be met with her Audi's video explaining that she volunteers for this, and
I am a person you are not.
Yeah, it was a real sort of betrayal. Like if you can imagine, you see yourself, part of you, your ego, or your super ego telling you how it is, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean that would be deeply traumatic, and obviously we see what that leads her to inside, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it leads to rebellion too. I mean, to the point where but it raises interesting questions too, because I mean, Mark's innie seems to know. Like, I guess there's no way of wiping their memories or whatever, because they all know about what happened, right? When they woke up and on the outside, and they all remember because they had to do there was a whole sort of Mission Impossible, got to do it before the clock strikes 12 kind of, mission that, where the timer's going to go off and something goes wrong and you're nail biting till the point where they wake up. Right. So it was a good suspenseful first season, and hopefully they can keep it going with this one. Right. This is kind of like, the difference between Silo 17 and Silo 18, right?
Yeah. There's definitely a lot to unpack here. I thought the parts that were really confounding, the part where Mark is trying to figure out what Cobell / Selvig is up to. And first, Milchick is like, oh, she wanted to have like a weird throuple with both your inner and outer selves, was pretty funny. And then, he keeps checking in. And then at the end of the episode, he finally confronts her. And, she's just so weird and obtuse. And it's really weird because, like, okay, first of all, like, why would Lumen not have, paid someone to go and pack up her stuff and deliver it to her? Because, like, that's just the weirdest thing. And then to have her sort of reaction to being questioned by Mark to just flip out was like, whoa, that is bizarro. Like, if I was Mark, I'd be like, yeah, I don't need to know what's going on inside. I'm out of here. Like, this is deeply unsettling.
Yeah, and the way they manage her too, like on the outside, where they kind of offer her a new role, and she's, well, I kind of like my old role. Yeah, well, you can't have your old role because Milchick is now taken over as floor manager, right? So
yeah.
And we have the little 12-year-old running around too.
All right, Jaime, what did you think of all this?
I thought it was an interesting approach because you get to see how society looks at severed folks. So what kind of door would you be question, and Dylan accidentally saying a door prize and offending the other person, who then says, wait a minute, so you were severed? Is like, yeah, oh, okay, well, we don't want severed people. And it also feels kind of telling that I know we've seen this actor before in other stuff, the door boss and CEO. Yeah. Like, it feels very intentional that he and Dylan look like they could be brothers.
Oh, it is completely intentional. I saw them posting on the Severance social feeds this week that that was a choice. Yeah.
And I'm still kind of curious what Cold Harbor?
Yes.
What Cold Harbor is and what macro data refinement does. Their work is mysterious and important. It does feel very nefarious. Mm-hmm. Not them, the innies, but more they're the unwitting pawns that are somehow helping tag data for some sort of AI thing that you can then power through the Severance chips. I mean, they talk about putting Severance chips in like the entire population. We know that Lumen is available in like 2 200 some countries or something that they have offices and
More
stuff,
countries than there are countries in this on our current planet.
Yeah. So it's all very odd. And so I'm very much intrigued by what's going on here. There's more weird questions like, we know Milchick is not severed, right? So he's kind of like a babysitter for the innies, but I'm really unclear what's going on with Ms. Wong, because it's bananas either way, right? If you have a severed child in there or you just have a regular child in there, still seems nutty.
Yeah, no good answers.
Yeah, and by the way, a couple of things. Adrian Martinez plays Mr. Saliba, which is the important Arsenal player, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And Dylan is the other important Arsenal player, played by Zach Cherry. And you're right, they do look identical.
Yeah, it's... I mean, this show is destined to be another, season worth of puzzle.
It's good sci-fi.
Right?
I mean, that's what it is, right? It seems like office politics, but it's good sci-fi, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's good that they're not... I'm hoping that they won't be completely, thrown by the sort of overnight success of the first season. Like it caught a lot of people up by surprise, and
including the showrunners. Yeah.
Well, that's it, and so then the temptation becomes to try and do too much. And I kind of liked, I can't remember one of the podcasts I was listening to this week. I want to say it was The Watch, so I want to try and give them credit. The Watch podcast. One of the guys on there made the point. If this was a different streaming service, they would have put episodes 1 and 2 out together because they kind of tell one story. But the fact that they are being Apple, doing Apple things and being like, no, that's not what we're doing here. We're going to do 10 episodes. It's going to take 10 weeks. It's going to be, we're going to do things our way, the way that we want them to be, as opposed to changing things up because they might fit, a different type of distribution model, or that might be more satisfying, because at the end of the first episode, there's definitely a lot of questions. Some of those questions get answered by episode 2, but they also set the stage for even more questions for the course of the season. I'm glad they did it this way. I think episode 2 stands alone on its own extremely well, and it bookends the first episode beautifully.
So just coming back to the showrunner, this was clearly done during COVID. I mean, and Ben Stiller said that in an interview I watched the other day, that this was done during COVID. They were in their bubble. This was their bubble, right? These actors, these, filmmakers, these set designers were in that 2020, 2021 bubble, right? And they had no idea that anybody would even want to watch this show, right? And they asked Ben Stiller what he thought about, going into season 2, and he goes, "I've never had a season 2. Most of my shows get canceled."
Yeah.
No, that was funny. Yeah. So, and again, like you said, like the constraints around the way the show was produced. I mean, because that was a thing, like during, shows made during COVID, either they're wearing masks, right? But they don't have like a mall's or an auditorium worth of characters, right? They have, an office where you've got 4 workers, and, they're, for all intents and purposes, they're socially distanced within that space, right? So it kind of, it's COVID gave us this show, right? In a sense. But it's kind of interesting the way it kind of runs, because I mean, if, as you and I both know, John, when you work in a cubicle, you're one of like 150 people on the floor, right?
Yeah.
So even just having the 4 of them, in with the entire open space, right, with no other desks, right?
Well, it's such a the set design, the production design of this show is truly one of the stars of the show. It is just so interesting, and every little detail just makes you want to know every little, like you want to just freeze every frame and have a deep look, 'cause it's just so beautiful. So,
there's an Apple commercial of Tim Cook going down the elevator, right? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah. It's one of those little snippets that they've been putting out. They've been putting out YouTube shorts and stuff, talking about individual characters or having fake Lumen onboarding, HR type material to explain how you help people get onboarded to the severed floor. And
I need to get a Lumen pin.
To Jonathan's point, like, Apple as a streaming service can do this because this is kind of like their lunch money, this is pocket change. I mean, Apple, as we're recording this, Apple just reported its quarterly revenues for well, it's Q1 of 2025. I'm not sure if it's their fiscal quarter, but it was all-time, revenue record. It was up 4% from the year ago quarter, so the equivalent quarter. So they're doing pretty good. So unlike some other services, like, man, we're not really sure if this is going to do well. Let's put out 3 episodes so that people, surely get the hook in there. It's like, well, these guys, one, can spend a little bit more time and money. It took 3 years to get season 2. They weren't in any rush or hurry to get it done. They got it done when it's done, and they released it as like, this is the way it's meant to be seen. You're going to see it week after week and go unravel the mystery, and we can wait it out because we're making money hand over fist.
Well, and this was a no-brainer. Like, this was such a surprise. Obviously, won awards. It was such an acclaimed success. So this was a no-brainer. But I think the real, FU of Apple came when they gave a second season to Foundation. The first season was really visionary and interesting and had a lot of interesting concepts, but it was a little all over the place. And then they were like, hey, you know what? We believe in the showrunners. We believe in the story. We paid a lot of money to get this Asimov property. Let's bring it back and let's try it again. And second season was much better than the first one. And to me, that was them just putting all their cards on the table, being like, yeah, we're Apple. We can afford to take a swing on this. Whereas other places would have been like, nah, it's too expensive. It's too high concept. It's not going to work. But we would have been cheated out of what turned out to be a pretty solid second season of a show. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. And now this is a legit phenomenon. Like, this is very reminiscent to me of Lost, where people are really invested. They like the characters. There's a huge bunch of mysteries. It's not just one mystery. It's a bunch of mysteries. And people just love to talk about it. But it's also, in its way, probably as accessible as Lost was, as opposed to hard sci-fi, as opposed to some of the complex stuff that we might enjoy. So, yeah, this has the makings of a legit phenomenon. How long they intend to do this for? Is it going to be a 3-season show, a 4 or 5-season show? Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I'm in. I'm sucked in already. I've only been watching it for 3 weeks, and I'm sucked in.
Yeah. By the way, Miss Huang is played by Sarah Bach, and she's 19.
There you go.
Born in 2006.
Oh, that hurts.
What?
That someone who's an adult was born in 2006?
She's a millennial, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's why, I chuckle if I'm on a business trip or something, and we might go to get beverages, at a bar or something after work. And when they do the driver's license checks, I'm like, bro, my birth year starts on the 19th. This is perfunctory.
How do you think I feel when I get checked? I just laugh at them. They just go, okay. Yeah, I've not seen a number that low, they said before. But what was I going to say? Oh, I've forgotten now. Yeah, it is what it is. It'll come back to me. All right, should we move to the watch list?
Yeah.
All right. I had a bunch of things in here. I stumbled across this clip. I'd seen it before. Apparently, when they were making the movie Paul, the sci-fi movie, Nick Frost and Simon Pegg took a run at A New Hope, and they did the scene with the desert scene with C-3PO and R2-D2. Of course, Nick Frost playing R2-D2, not using bleeps and blops because they couldn't agree on it. But it's hilarious. So, if you want a good laugh, I always wondered what R2-D2 was saying, in that scene, but now I know. Another quick one. I was talking about Saturday Night Live earlier. Or Saturday Night is the name of the movie. I keep saying live. It was originally called Saturday Night, the show. Benny Safdie. Benny Safdie? Yeah, he was scheduled to play Andy Kaufman, but he ended up he was directing a movie or something like that, and it came up, so he had a conflict, which is why he didn't end up in the show. But that said, Saturday Night is now available on Crave in Canada, so I would assume it's on the Max in the States. Yeah, so check it out. It's pretty good. It's pretty much like the story about the first airing. And there's a lot of, it covers a lot of ground in the first episode. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I watched it as well, and it's good. I think it takes a little bit of I know from reading some of the material before it came out that they sort of amalgamated different events, and so it's like all these kind of biopic-y kind of things, in that it kind of, you know, amalgamates stories and crosses things over. I did think it was a little over the top at times. Just some of the sort of caricatures of the players and stuff was a little overwrought. But it was entertaining. I certainly enjoyed myself, and I thought, you know, that there was stuff to like about it, but I don't know. I mean, it was a little all over the place, and I'll be honest, it occurred to me in the very first scene that we see the actor playing Andy Kaufman. I was like, wow, that guy's way taller than Andy Kaufman was. So I'm not sure it worked for me, but yeah.
Okay.
I'm a big Andy Kaufman fan, and so yeah, that one kind of stood out to me as what? But yeah.
No, I gotta say, I remember the first time I saw the show. It was on, like, it was a Saturday night, obviously, at somebody's basement, and we were, you know, having beers and doing other things, and it was on in the corner, and yeah, just caught everybody it was buzzing in the high school back then, right? So I started watching it for sure, but I didn't watch every episode. But it was interesting because the first season started with a comedian or somebody doing a monologue, right? And George Carlin was the first host. As I mentioned before, I went to TIFF on Friday last week, and I watched The Brutalist in 70mm. It was actually filmed in VistaVision, which is interesting. It's 35mm format, but like IMAX, the projectors or the cameras turn on its side, so you get a wider picture frame. And apparently, A New Hope was also shot in VistaVision too, initially, right? So yeah, and like I said, it's a super good movie. If again, 3.5 hours long, but a 15-minute break in the middle with a timed intermission. As you know, it's on the reel, right? So it's not like you go see somewhere they will cut it out, but definitely worth watching. It's a really good story. I'm a huge architecture fan, so you know that Bauhaus type architecture is my bailiwick too. So, but yeah, it's got you know, the one thing about, I mean, without trying to give too much away, the one thing about movies that win Academy Awards is always a part of the movie or a portion of the movie that's just like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. Maybe you would see it coming. Yeah, I guess, no, I shouldn't say I didn't see it coming. I did see it coming, but I was surprised that they went there. But yeah, so that's all I'm going to say about that. There's a couple of twists and turns in the second half of the movie that are worth the price of admission. And that's my 3 picks for the week. And over to Jonathan.
Yeah, so this week we got the first 2 episodes of the new Spider-Man series on Disney+, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. At first glance, it seems like it is kind of a prequel to the Tom Holland, you know, Spider-Man Homecoming series, but quickly, as we start watching it, we realize that it is sort of its own unique take. It definitely lifts a lot of the vibes there. You know, he lives with his Aunt May. His Aunt May is, you know, younger and more attractive, a la Marissa Tomei, as opposed to, you know, a much older, you know, gray-haired lady has been portrayed in the comic books and in some of the movies. And it also is the first time we kind of get a different, really rather different take on how Peter gets his powers in the first episode, which is kind of, you know, deliberately they kind of don't do that with the Tom Holland stuff. They kind of skipped it because they feel like, you know, it's been done to death. I like that they did something different here and that it didn't belabor it either. It wasn't the exact same story again. It was a different twist, but they also didn't kind of go crazy on it. But it's fun. It's fun and it's light. It has a lot of the same energy as the Tom Holland movies. You know, he's definitely a younger Spider-Man, a younger Peter Parker. He's a high school student. He's got high school problems. They've introduced some new supporting characters. So there's no MJ. There's no Ned. We do get other characters that are familiar to comic fans and some of the movie fans. So, you know, be prepared. You will see some of your favorites characters pop up, but maybe some different iterations of those characters too. I thought it was really strong. I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, and you know, I don't mind that it's not sort of perfectly in canon with all the other stuff. Like, I think there's plenty of room for, you know, these different versions. I've over the course of my lifetime, I've probably watched, I mean, they must have redone Spider-Man in the cartoons at least 8 to 10 times, maybe more. And I've watched many, if not most, of those series. And I have room for all of them. Like, I don't, especially in a world where they've introduced the Spider-Verse, where there are all these different interpretations of the Spider legend. I don't think that it's a huge leap for anybody to go in there. I mean, it's still Peter Parker. He's still the gawky kid with glasses. He kind of, accidentally gets these powers, but it doesn't change the fact that he's got a complicated life. And, he's always kind of trying to do the right thing, but kind of not doing well with it. I thought this was really fun, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest of the series. So, if you're looking for something that's lighter, the animation style is fresh. It doesn't feel too familiar, which is nice. Kind of has a comic booky vibe, but not quite as explicit as maybe the Miles Morales movies. If you're looking for something fun and you miss your Spider-Man fix, this is great.
Yeah, I watched the first 2 episodes of this because I think they dropped 2 on the first day.
They did, yeah.
And it is pretty endearing. I did have to double check. I'm like, man, sometimes it really sounds like Tom Holland.
Yeah.
And the character design for where we're at with Spider-Man, it's kind of interesting that it's, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a less mature version of all the tech, right? He's got like a little gas canister on his hip that he has to turn the little wheel so he can get more pressure to the web shooters and stuff. So it's very raw and different than the traditional Spider-Man that's very sleek.
Yeah.
What do you got for us, Jaime?
It's not a traditional watch list kind of thing, but if you all remember Tamagotchi, or Tamagotchi if you prefer, the little like keychain electronic toy sort of thing where you raise a little creature like as a pet, as a virtual pet. Well, those are still around, or they came back at some point. I kind of lost track of what happened. And there's a Star Wars connection, so you can get a Darth Vader themed one with a helmet, sort of protective silicone case. And you get to raise not a little creature from an egg to, like a Pokemon style transformation adult. You get to raise young Anakin from a boy, and he will become Darth Vader.
What could possibly go wrong?
Apparently you can't stop this, but like maybe if you give him some more love and some hope, maybe you'll find the good ending to this.
Yeah, that's a strange thing to turn into a Tamagotchi.
Yeah, there's also an R2-D2 and a Grogu, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah. I only learned that this series of, branded ones existed because of the Darth Vader one that's here in the Engadget link. But yeah, you're right. They do mention that there's other ones. So you have your choices.
Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, hey, Jonathan, people in touch with you, where do they find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky, or on Instagram as @JPK News, or you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/@JPK.
Cool. And Jaime, people in touch with you, where do they find you?
I'm on Instagram as @DevWithTheHair.
All right, cool. Well, my name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, on the Blue Sky, the Mastodon, the Instagram, various other places, and like that. So until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
By the way, Jonathan, did you see that our Lord and Master Elon Musk is beta testing Starlink for iPhone?
How to explain that to me?
Well, apparently they're looking at like they're testing it with T-Mobile right now in the States. Beta testing it with Starlink satellite connection for the phone, I guess.
So theoretically, you wouldn't need to be near a cell responsive tower. You could just be getting it from. Yeah. So it's turning your iPhone into a satellite phone.
Yeah, well, I mean, the iPhone has got satellite capability right now for emergency broadcasting and that kind of stuff, right? So, yeah, the later models, I think the 14, I want to say, Jaime.
Yeah, because it's been... Yes, that would make sense because they launched it with, it's free, the emergency satellite service is free for 2 years, and then we said, well, okay, the 2 years are up, and they're like, it's still free. So it's unclear if and when they'll ever end up charging for that emergency service.
Yeah, so apparently Android devices running Android 15 or iOS 18.3 will be able to use this. So what does it say here? I don't know if it. Yeah, I don't know. It's direct to cell satellite service. T-Mobile has a direct to cell satellite service. It'll probably be $1 billion per month. You know.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, my internet is not cheap, but I have zero options, so it is what it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, your internet's not cheap, but then neither is mine, comparatively speaking, right?
Yeah, so. I mean, it's all relative. I mean, compared to our American neighbors, we pay a significant penny for our internet across the board and our mobile service and. But, yeah, I mean, right now I am in the middle of a farming community and have very reliable internet service that has allowed me to stream shows and do, video meetings, and I've never had an issue now. In about 3 weeks from now, my daughter's moving in with me, at which point we will be putting this thing to the test because she is a high-end gamer and also uses her social media stuff, video chats and stuff with her girlfriends and her friends and everything. So it'll be really interesting to see how that turns out. But
so Elon's satellites will start catching fire and falling out of the sky and stuff like that.
It's we should be so lucky.
Cool.
Yeah.
Something else to look forward to. Well, how's the cell service where you are? Do you have dips and dives as you're driving around?
Yes, I would say very much so. This time of year is not bad because it is winter and there's a lot of defoliation, which helps. So my signals aren't bad. I've only a couple of times it's tried to tag up on the American side. Like for your perspective, Jaime, I can see Maine from my backyard here. So that's how close I am to the US-Canada border here. So when it goes searching for a ping, sometimes it's pinging Canada and sometimes it's pinging the United States. And I try very hard to not let it ping the United States because it wants to charge me extra money when it does that. So
yeah, just turn off the data roaming or whatever.
Yeah, so roaming. I do. Yeah, but yeah, it hasn't been terrible where I am. I expect that when it comes around to spring and summer, when the trees are all full and the forests are thick, it might be a little more challenging. But so far, so good. I'm really kind of hoping that before too long, I'll have an actual permanent residence here, that maybe it will be a little further away from the border and give me an opportunity to not have that issue. But for right now, it's all right.
Yeah, I've tried to work in occasionally, at least once for a week out of the year. Last year I went, or 2 years ago I went twice. And without Starlink, it working in the States working in New Brunswick, where you are, the rural it's just horrible. So
it is. So yeah, again, I know that there is, if you are in some of the actual towns around here, they do actually have high-speed internet that is available. If you are living rurally, you can do line of sight connections. And that's what a lot of people in rural communities do. But Starlink is by far the best technology for truly remote areas right now. It's just quite expensive to do so. So obviously it's, you have to weigh that in. Right now I'm fortunate enough to be staying somewhere where my other costs are low, so I can afford to invest in that for the time being. So.
Yeah, we did record one episode on the farm, I believe, right?
We did. Remember, we recorded one out on the deck.
Chorus of crickets?
Yes. Well, hopefully by the time you come down for your next visit, there'll be a more usable studio space for us. Yeah.
It would be robust.
Yes.
No, I can't find that episode. Oh, I guess it would be live. Would be the. Did we put live in the title? I can't remember. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
Many moons ago. Cool. All right. Did you guys do any house searching or looking at neighborhoods?
Yeah, well, Sherry was down for the weekend, so we went and looked at 3 very different properties in the area. We looked at one that was sort of more rural and sort of farm-esque. We looked at one that was more cottagey, and we looked at one that was actually in town, but in a bit of a sort of more isolated neighborhood. And they all kind of had their redeeming qualities. The rural property came with 215 acres of forest with trails blazed in it, so that would be quite a fun place to have with the dogs and everything. But the house wasn't quite what we were looking for, and it was a little bit more remote than I think we were looking for. The cottage was beautiful. If people were just looking for a cottage, it was gorgeous. It was on this beautiful property, vistas of the lake, huge windows, the whole thing. It was gorgeous. It was lakefront. But the house was just in no way someplace you'd want to live, with a family of 4 for any period of time. It's just.
Was it too small or just needed work or?
It didn't need a lot of work. It could probably use like a little more space, but yeah, I think it just, as it is, the rooms were just a little small, and it was just, there wasn't enough sort of space. And it was very much remote. It was like a good 45 minutes further south than where my aunt and uncle's farm is, so it was pretty isolated. So that was not a great feature. We did really like the place in town, but their asking price is quite high, so I don't think that's going to be a good fit for us. So the search continues.
Go look at that really old house, so right downtown by the bridge. That was that one property we saw.
Yeah, we've sort of looked at all the possibilities that we can. I'm going to go this weekend with an agent to go look at a couple other properties. So we found an agent down here that's somebody that my cousin went to school with, and he seems like a real nice guy. So he's going to show me a few more things down here. But he said, it'll be dribs and drabs for the next little while. It really isn't until, he said, like usually mid to late March is when we start to see more and more listings coming on the market here, which is a little behind where we are in Ontario, but it's not the worst thing in the world. At least by then, hopefully our house will have sold. We'll know kind of exactly what our budget is, and that'll be good to figure out. But yeah, I think we'll just have to keep at it and see what we can find, because we have to be out of here before the end of April. So somehow we have to find something. I mean, we may end up having to rent a house or something for a little while, but we'll see.
Yeah, right. Cool.
Yeah, I got to go back home next weekend, and one last week of packing and organizing and trying to get things as tidied as possible so that the house can go on the market.
Yeah, when does it go? Early February?
The goal, I think, was to try and list the third week of February, the week of Family Day. So
okay, so people will have time to go. Yeah,
yeah. I think the goal is going to be I'm going to come back. We're going to, clean, pack, and organize, get all that stuff set up, and then by the time we come to the weekend of the 15th and 16th, Sherry and Faye and the dog and I will load up in a car, load up Faye's stuff, and we're going to come down here for at least a week, probably 2, for the all the open houses and all the stuff that happens during a sale that we just don't want to be around for. And then I think Sherry will go back to Mississauga once that process is over, but I think Faye is going to stay down with me henceforth, so at least I'll have another human being to call company here in the countryside. And yeah, obviously, depending on closing dates and everything, our son has to finish his second year of college before he can do anything else. So hopefully all that comes together.
Well, just one last note here, just since we were talking about it before, apparently in the movie Saturday Night Live, Saturday Night, I keep saying that, right? They used CGI to fix the time displayed on the clocks. Can you believe it?
Okay, see, now it can't win an Oscar. I'm sorry. Just that's where I draw
I think
the line.
it didn't get nominated, I gotta say, right?
That's right. Right.
All right.
All right.
Cool. All right. Well, let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Go watch Severance.
Yes. Can we squeeze Severance in? Again, I'm 4 hours ahead of Jaime now. It's starting to get late here now. So
Yeah. Okay. True.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Good talk to you guys.
See you later.
So next week,
Bye.
Star Trek, and Severance.
Right. The 2 episodes
Which
of
Star Trek
Prodigy.
are we doing?
Prodigy.
Oh, Prodigy. Okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
Cool.
All right.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.